before going to Africa, you have a bit of a view of it, and you think, okay, well, Africa has got its. If we put more money into it, that'll fix it. If we more aid, we'll fix it. They talk about a couple of issues that security issues. Now, Tanzania is quite a peaceful sort of a place, and I think for a whole bunch of reasons, perhaps the locals just simply can't be bothered, but it's actually been lucky to be quite a peaceful sort of an area. When we were running this camp, we took it over from some. Originally, Australians ran it, and South Africans ran it, then Australians took it again. And so I came in about 2.5 years ago, and the prior group and the South Africans had run it completely differently, and they'd had about 32 armed security guards. We had 3 guys there, and essentially 1 person on shift, and he would just manage the fuel inventory, the access at the gates, keep track of records, and yes, they had a shotgun, but for safety's sake it was never loaded, so that was a little bit of just a deterrent value rather than anything else. Interestingly, I think the reason that the previous crew had a 24, in fact 32 armed guards at one point was that they needed them. They wouldn't go out into the field without an armed guard. They'd had 3 armed incidents where one chap had come into a camp with an automatic weapon and shot it up and stolen the payroll. Another with a roadblock where an armed bandit had held them up at gunpoint. When you went back and looked at it, all of those armed incidents, the root cause was disgruntled employees. The payroll robbery was about a disgruntled employee who'd put up a soldier to the task and gone into it. And essentially, so what we found, we said we can get away with 3 security guards. The rest of them are doing nothing but getting bored. And we started treating people nicely. We started giving lifts to the locals whenever we had a vehicle running down the track, and you'd find women walking with baskets on their head, or old men or kids who just needed to get to school. We'd just take them and give them a lift along our way. We'd started hiring the locals, paying them decently, treating them well. We had a first aid clinic at the camp, and we would use that for the local village. So completely changed. I think we were much safer. We even had a point, just a simple example, when there was a couple of armed robbers came into the area. Look, they were after a specific target, an individual who had some superannuation money paid to him. The grapevine got around, and we heard about these guys before they even got within 30 kilometres of us. Similarly, we had another example was a vehicle. We'd left the radio on. We had HF radios in the vehicles, and one chap walked 5 kilometres across the creek and 5 kilometres to camp just to say, hey, by the way, you've left the radio on, and I can't turn it off because the car's locked. The other interesting thing I found in Africa is the whole process of aid, and a good example is some of the orphanages there. If you look it up, any number of examples of people running orphanages, and I'm not saying all by any means, there's certainly some people doing some really, really good work, but you just need to have a little bit of skepticism if you are putting money into something there, because so many cases that we'd come across where there'd be an orphanage, and when you actually looked into it, of the 15 kids there, 8 or 9 or 10 of them belonged to the husband and wife who were running it. And when you look at the back, they're running around in ragtag clothes, because that obviously is raises sympathy, and the kids have enough clothes. Out at the very back of the orphanage, the father's driving a Mercedes, or a Land Cruiser or equivalent. So it's nothing's quite necessarily what you see. You think, I came across a study a few years ago, which I should dig out, which looked at a span in Africa. Over 10 years, $179 billion worth of aid was put into Africa. During the same 10 years, $190 billion of money was expatriated by African leaders into offshore bank accounts. So that's $179 billion in and $190 billion out. And it's easy to blame corruption, and very tempting and to say, well, it's all bad people. And yes, that's certainly a degree of truth to that. But equally, you have to put yourself in the context of an African leader who's got kids who he would like to send to Harvard University as much as anybody else would, or at least to get them to some sort of area of safety, to live in Europe, or to be able to go to good universities. And he knows he's perhaps got 6 months before the next coup comes along and takes him out. So what does he or she do? They rip, tear and bust, and they try to make everything they can. So it's an endemic problem that simply putting more money into doesn't fix. Another good example was, if you can see the bottom left picture there, you'll see a clinic at a village called Lubalisi. It's a village of about 500 people, which was about 27 kilometres from camp and another 27 to the next village of any size. That was built by some well-intended aid workers for around about 30 million shillings, which is about 20,000 US dollars. Now on the right picture you can see our little first aid hut, which was actually quite deep. It's about a third the size of the Lubalisi clinic. We built that for $1,000. There were a couple of chaps in the area who very enterprising said, well, we built Lubalisi clinic, or we got, the such and such group helped us build it. Now do you think you could chip in some money or help us get other aid organisations to chip in 50 million shillings to build a doctor's residence? And we said, well, okay, well, that seems like a lot of money. Why do you need that much? Well, we need a doctor and a nurse, so it has to be two. And I said, well, okay, so who's going to pay the salaries? Oh, the government has agreed to that. So do you have anything in writing to that effect? Well, no. So they could tell you what, we'll build some medical hut accommodation that will be suitable, so when a medic comes or a doctor comes, they'll have someone to live. Oh, no, we've let a contract. So I said, we went down the path, can we see the contract? Oh yes, and here's the build spec and here's the standard. Honestly, it was quite amazing. The quote included items like 600 bags of cement at 23,000 shillings each. Now we were buying bags of cement at the time at 19,000 shillings each, so I'm not sure why it was, we weren't paying local prices by any means, I'm sure. They also included something like, when we worked out the sums, the quantities of nails was about 350 kilos of nails to build a hut about the size of that, and cement, so most of it's built of stone. So in the end it just simply didn't stack up. So we essentially said we'll build it for free, and the feedback was no, we want to use our contractors, just give us money. So in the end we didn't go down the path of that. We also received a great business plan from an enterprising local who said, I have a great business plan, I can buy goats here for 2,000, or I think it was 20,000 shillings, and I can sell them in the Congo for 40,000 shillings. Will you lend me 2 million shillings so that I can sell goats to the Congo? Sure. How do you know you're going to get... The more we dug into it, the less substance there was to it, and the higher the risk was, and in fact there was actually no way of returning the money. It was simply just will you give me 2 million shillings? Which brings me to one of my favourite conversations was, will you buy us a tractor? I was sitting around the campfire one night with the guys, and they said, we like the way you Mzungus grow crops. You grow, have a lot of money because you can grow big areas and you use tractors. Would you buy us a tractor? We said, well, look, you need to know how to maintain a tractor. And to be honest, we didn't start with tractors. We started with a field, and we'd plant a bit more 1 year, and then that would give us a surplus, and we'd sell the surplus, and we'd use that to pay someone to plough a bit more the following year and buy some fertiliser, and we'd get a bit more the year after that, and we'd have a bit more surplus, and after a couple of years we could hire somebody to put a tractor through there and plough more. Then that would give us a big enough crop the following year that we'd be able to buy a tractor. And you can see him nodding, and he's, oh yeah, good, yes, good idea, yep, and we could do more, yep, and then we'd be able to buy a tractor, yep, and just each point then nodding, and yeah, great idea. And the end of the conversation, yep, you guessed it, so will you buy us a tractor? You simply, the idea that you could simply buy a tractor in there and people would be able to make it run. You saw the Illegala ferry, without money to buy the fuel, without an understanding of maintenance, without skilled operators, there's absolutely no point in putting a tractor into there. I've seen other volunteers in some of the more civilised areas of Tanzania and indeed other parts of Africa, and I won't name it, but you could Google it and you could find organisations where you can volunteer, in parentheses, you pay $4,000 a month to come out to Africa and help, and that money gets used to fund orphanages and build hospitals, etc., etc. Or so the story goes. And when you look into it, these people come in, they go into essentially a compound, they pay 20 euros a night for a bunk bed, where people on the street or backpackers coming in are paying 10 euros a night. They put money into an orphanage, which again, the person running the orphanage turns out to be the person who's organising the whole process, who happens to drive a nice car, if not a Mercedes, and at least a brand new Toyota. The money that's going to the hospital is being much siphoned off. So literally, again, this comes back to other studies which show that about 92% of aid money goes into admin, and only about 8 to 10% gets delivered aid to the people who need it. My rule of thumb was to these people, I said, if you want to donate $4,000 a month to come and volunteer in Africa, come out to where we are in the middle of absolutely nowhere and put a well into a village. You'll make a massive difference with it. So it's, lest you think you should never do anything to Africa and wash your hands of it, I will say that I've come across a few people, and I put Livingstone Tanzania Trust in there because that's another chap I met. His name's Julian by coincidence, so I knew he was a good bloke when we met. It was in a little fly-speck village, staying in a $2 a night accommodation, below backpacker standard, and he's an English guy who just came in and said, I really think I need to make a difference here. I'm sick of the way the aid industry runs through here. So he's gone in, he's raised a group of friends who've helped him with money, he's built a school, he's built a farm, he's built a training farm, and with a group of other people now, they're actually training local Tanzanians not only to be farmers and to be better farmers, but to train other Tanzanians. So you've got how can I put it, a very grassroots approach to the people actually putting their time, effort and money into improving a lot of people.